Yeah, that makes sense. Every company was rushing to get some PR out, right? Whether it be, with us, it was the new product features earlier in the year that we were, trying to get everyone aware of what we were doing with the virtual waiting room. And there's so many companies in that boat of just how to respond to what's going on.
Totally. And on that note, I want to jump right in. So for those of you who are watching, I'm Tyler McLennan with Dentist on Demand, and I'm very lucky to have with me Mr. Justin Sharp, the founder of CareCru. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you, Tyler. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. We've been meaning to get together for a little while now, so I'm glad I finally nailed you down. You're a busy guy, so thanks.
We've been wanting to do this for a year and a half now, I think.
A year and a half, that's right. We're like, why are we doing that podcast, man? Let's get it done.
Yeah.
My trusty sidekick is waving at me. What do you need? Hi, this is Mark. Say hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Are we good? All right, Mark's like he's babysitting all the technical stuff we have going on around us. So he's babysitting me too. He's like, okay, now don't misbehave. So CareCru, tell me about CareCru. I mean, I've seen CareCru for the last couple of years. You guys are starting to blow up now and do great things out there. So from what I know, I'm just going to jump right in. You're the founder of CareCru. What is it? Take us through it.
I'm one of the founders of CareCru. There's myself, there's Lonnie McLean. Lonnie's the CEO. And then there's also Mark Joseph. Mark heads up everything product related. So we started about, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago now. Time flies when you're doing these things. You kind of, when you kick these things off, you just put your head down and come up for air years later.
Yeah, tell me.
But we got started initially, looking at the healthcare space overall and looking at dental, especially, of just where there was an opportunity first off with online scheduling. That was actually one of the things that we started with. And, very, very quickly when we went to market there, we realized that there was just such a bigger opportunity where nobody was really coming into the dental space with a true platform sitting on top of their practice management software. And there was all this data within the practice management software that was just being totally unleveraged. It's a gold mine of knowledge to help somebody better run their practice, as I'm sure going into many of your different clients, that a lot of them are unaware of certain things happening at the practice, and a lot of that information sits within the practice management software, but it can't be unearthed and it can't be utilized. So we noticed that right away. Spent the first couple of years really developing the platform. We've been commercial now for about the last year and a half, and everything that we do with the platform is really all centered around growth. It's really a platform to help grow, better enable the practice staff at the practice, which then enables a better patient experience. There's a lot that we do with automation. So we'll take, care of all of your recare messages that would need to go out, all your reminder messages, any sort of virtual waiting room message if you need to tell somebody to wait, even prompting them to post, Google reviews for your practice automatically after the appointment. And there's tons of other automation workflows that are coming down the pipeline, but really it takes all those tasks off the front desk. And that's where, we call our product a lot of the times Donna. Donna is the virtual assistant that goes in and helps your practice.
Right.
And the enablement of the better patient experience comes when you actually take that stuff off the staff's plate, because now they're able to worry about such higher value activities, like actually interfacing with the patients that are in the door. Like when they come in, let's actually provide them with a really good patient experience at the practice. Right. Thus, then it even accelerates the things like Google reviews, which then brings more new patients in the door. Right. So we're really, the long of it is, the short of it is, after explaining the long of it, is we're really a growth platform.
A growth platform. Okay. So talk to me a little bit, like, what are you seeing out there? Like when you're talking to somebody about CareCru for the first time and you're talking about the data that sits in their practice, I mean, what does that conversation look like? Are you just sort of saying, look, how are you jumping into the practice management software discussion? Are you like, let's take a look at what you're working with on a software level? Like, how do you start that conversation with a dentist or with a dental team? I guess.
It'll start from a growth perspective. Like what are they focused on? I mean, what kind of demographic is that practice? Is it a new build? Is it, an established practice that's got, 3,000 to, 10,000 active patients that are all sitting there in that recare funnel waiting to be capitalized on? Right. Is it a growing group, right? Which is our focus in the US with some of these groups that we work with. So it really depends on what demographic the practice is in, what their focus is on. Are they really worried about new patients? Are they really kind of saying, hey, we're not really looking exactly for new patients, which, I always try to respond to some of the dentists that might say that. Well, that's crazy to say that, but the
Right.
point being more, we have a lot of opportunity in our existing patients that we need to mine. So
Mhm.
I would say starting with the focus on growth, like where are the growth opportunities?
Right. Within your practice. And then in terms of, what do you currently have? What is your recare doing? And then I'm assuming there's a leaky bucket component to it as well, making sure that is there a certain segment of this that addresses, like, say, a leaky bucket if they're losing patients, or is it ingrained sort of in the process that you just inherently will know that once you start working with CareCru if you're actually losing patients?
So there's a lot of different prompts that once we actually get installed with the practice and be able to see where the opportunities lie, I would say a majority of practices, it's recare. And it's something that it's just the dental industry and a lot of the gurus in dental, we've been preaching it for the last, you know, 40 years about just how important it is to run that hygiene side of the business and get those patients back in the door, get them committing to their standard of care. So much of your treatment is going to be scheduled off of those hygiene patients coming back in the door. So what we've gone and developed is a very, very efficient automated recare system. And so Donna's actually going to go out there, reach out to all of those existing patients that are doing unscheduled. We've got a lot of automated touch points, unique touch points. It's not that same robotic message that you've seen in other systems. But
Right.
just reach out once a month, and then you get, you look at your phone from your dental practice and you see 6 of the same messages, exact same,
Yeah.
and 6 months down the
It's
road,
an appointment.
and it's a bad look on the practice, right? It seems like you're just kind of offloading this work onto some naive system, whereas with us, like, our message is a lot more human sounding. It's a lot more personal to the patient, and there's also that prompt to book online. So many times it's, okay, I got my message, call this number, and now you're playing phone tag over the next week to get into the practice. Or you might have got the message because you're working and it's 12 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and you're, wanting to book your appointment because it's the little time that you have. And so everything that we're doing, and you see this in so many other industries, everything is going to self-serve.
It's all
And so
on.
that's really that, exactly. And that's how we enable that better patient experience, because now it's a closed loop system. We're just filling that schedule in the background, and the staff just have to pay attention to using their practice management software to the best of its ability. It's not like we come in there and say, hey, stop using Dentrix, stop using, ClearDent or Tracker or whatever PMS that you might be using,
Mhm.
and start using these systems over here. We make sure it's no, you keep doing exactly what you're doing, because we've spent so much time actually working with the existing, and you've seen people, I'm sure, use Dentrix, 100 different practices using it 100 different ways. And so we've listened to all those ways and we work with all of that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And so my question then is, if we are automating, are we taking a lot of that work away from the reception team in terms of, like they say, if you're going through that recall list and they get to the D's or the E's, and it's like, well, we never got to the F's or the G's and the H's, like, of the recall list. So when it's automated, are they picking up the phone and calling patients at any point, or is it completely automated that way too?
So it is totally up to the practice. There is definitely very good opportunity for coming in at the right time with a phone call, with a personal touch. If somebody is, say, doesn't respond to the first 3 or 4 automated messages,
Oh,
that's where Donna actually prompts the practice to call them. So we actually have a whole list for recare on our patient management. It's a whole module in itself that actually comes up with the patients that Donna is saying, hey, here are the great patients to call. So instead of saying, hey, here's a list of 1,200 patients, here's a tool,
yeah.
go nuts and start calling all these patients, it's a
There's a pen
total
and a phone.
inefficient use of time. I've seen numerous practices of data from other systems where, they've got 1,000 calls made, and, 1%. So let's just say, 10 of those calls actually resulting in some sort of conversation with the practice.
Right.
It's such an inefficient use of time, where all the other calls, it's all resulting in, I left message on machine. And you'll actually see that note over and over again in some of these systems. Whereas, with the way that we provide our automated system, we actually have results. And this is really why we started partnering with Dental Corp, and why it's become such a big initiative for them, is because our recare messages are so much more conversion optimized. You're able to now, when your staff go in and actually call a patient, it's now a much more effective use of their time. And we've actually seen those conversion rates lift dramatically.
Hmm. And it tells me that, the phone call, any conversation face to face or in person over the phone, this sort of clears the way for the more important conversations, right? So if all the scheduling and everything is done automatically, if you already know when you're going to the dentist, like everything's predetermined for you. Now, anytime you're conversing with the dental office, it's probably for something that's going to require a little more attention. So possibly, I'm looking at getting a crown done. Possibly, I'm looking at getting some cosmetic. I think that it opens that communication channel to say we don't really need to talk about your scheduling; it's all automatically done. Let's talk more about your dental care. Perhaps you want to enhance your smile somehow. Maybe there's other avenues of conversation we can go down here to perhaps improve your smile, right?
That's right. And you hit the nail on the head. I think just allowing the practice staff to just lift their head up and communicate with that patient. That's where, I mean, so many good conversations and good action items come out of those conversations. You'll be able to actually pay more attention to that treatment plan that might have just got presented, but you realize they're walking out the door with that crown unscheduled. Right. So
we see treatment plans go like they fall off a cliff at some point.
Exactly.
Right. And you're like, well, hold on. What happened with that? You've got 10 treatment plans sitting out there in no man's land. What happened to those? Right. So
that's right.
If it frees up that time, it allows you to come back to the treatment plans, follow up with the patient. How are you feeling about the conversation we had, whatever your interview style is, to again, get away from the pedestrian, the scheduling bits and pieces, move more into a meaningful conversation. So I love that. Tell me a little bit about sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to add to that, one other really simple thing that I love to tell some of these practice managers is to even bring up the conversation topic of those Google reviews, right? Just the simple thing of, hey, 5-star Google reviews are really important to Dr. So-and-so. If you could leave us that Google review, that would really go a long way. If I was a patient and somebody said that to me, oh, no problem, right? I'll leave that Google review right now for you, right? So that's an example where, we've seen practices that alongside the automation bring up that conversation topic, and they're getting I seen one in their bigger practice getting 55-star Google reviews a month, just crushing it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because they're asking, right? They're asking they have a system in place, right? So now it's, again, less about scheduling, more about let's get that conversation about Google reviews. Make sure we ask every single patient to leave the practice. Would you mind? It would mean a lot to us. We're a tight-knit team here. It's important to us that you're having a great experience. So please, by all means, make sure you give us a Google review. Waitlist management. So is that, when I see waitlist management, is that you're scheduling in last minute cancellations? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely centered around keeping the schedule filled. And I'd say almost the entire platform is centered around keeping that schedule filled.
Of course. Yeah.
That's one that's really unique to us, where instead of providing you, say, a list that you can add patients manually onto it, this is where online scheduling comes into play, and why it's game changing, where we can grow that list organically by allowing patients to just opt into that list themselves. So now patients jump onto the list themselves. You're not having to build this wait list yourself of people that want to come in sooner. Now you've actually just naturally have this list that now, let's say so-and-so cancels tomorrow, you can select all those patients that would be relevant for that appointment, filter by preferences, okay, maybe you got a list of 100 and only 10 of them actually apply where they've said they want to come in at 11 a.m. Okay, you don't even have to worry about texting those other patients and annoy them with this message when it doesn't even apply to them. So you can filter that list, you can mass text them all, and then, depending on how you want to operate, whether it's first come, first serve, or you want to customize the message, right? You can do that. So it's really, instead of you having to go through the list, call them all, you're able to really reach out quickly and get that cancellation filled.
Right. That's fantastic. I'm noticing, so we touched on text messaging. I mean, again, that's a fully customizable part of your platform, I would assume. Of course.
For sure. Yeah, I would, all of our touch points are customizable. I'd say text messaging, also another unique aspect to us, where we'll actually provide that dedicated local number. It's not like we have separate numbers for the automation, separate numbers for the manual messages from the staff. It's all one seamless number. So from a patient experience, I got one number I'm saving forever. I'm texting, Sunshine Smiles Dental or whoever, and I'm just remembering that one number and saving it in my phone.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so they have that dedicated number, so they know, and I have seen this before, and it's not knocking on anybody, but I'll get the random text from a number I don't recognize saying, you've got an appointment. Let's just say this happened years ago, where it's a random number saying you have a dental appointment Tuesday at 2:00. And I'm like, well, whose number is this? I don't understand.
That's right.
So as long as it's attached to a dental office, and it's the same number every time, and it's dedicated and it lives within your software, then that makes sense to me.
That's right. And depending on the carrier of the patient's phone, I mean, you can pick up some of that caller ID information. So some of them will say, oh, maybe this practice, right? Which is another really subtle thing, that just being able to have the patient, understand who's reaching out to them, goes a long way.
And you guys mentioned on your website, search engine optimization. So I'm assuming that plays hand in hand with you guys facilitating the Google reviews.
For sure. That's a good topic that, if we unraveling what we do for SEO is important, because I think it provides some of your listeners even just some education on how it works. And when you look at Google reviews specifically, or even your reviews online, that accounts for 20% of Google's SEO algorithm, right? When somebody searches Vancouver dentist or whatever, and up comes the list, your ranking on that list is 20% of that ranking is going to come from your reputation online, meaning your reviews. So 1/5 of that,
number,
right?
That's a big number.
Yeah, and that's why it's so key to boost your reputation through our automation, where you might be sitting at, let's say, a 4.2 average review rating on Google, and only have about 20 reviews. That's not doing you any justice, right? You need to get to that 4.8 average and above. Over 100 Google reviews. You need to get yourself in that sphere of influence online, so that you're generating that much more traffic. And you might have to be even more depending on how competitive your area is. So 20%. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so with SEO, with Google reviews, quantity does matter.
Quantity, the average rating of that quantity, and then the frequency of the reviews. You might have generated a bunch of quantity 2 years ago, right? But it doesn't matter. The frequency of those reviews is key. Right. Oh. You need to show that you're frequently getting these patients going, yeah, I love going to this dentist. He's the best. Right. And another subtle thing, how patients actually look at the reviews, is being able to easily respond to them. If it's a negative review, respond to it. Positive, thank them for it. Right. Just respond to it. So we actually provide that portal that pulls up all your reviews online and easily allows you to respond to those reviews.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, and is there like a filter? I guess, well, because if it's my practice, if I'm a dentist and I'm looking at the reviews, I'm looking at every review anyways. So
that's right.
You're probably going to pick off the negative ones pretty quick.
That's right.
You know what? Hey, that's a learning experience. I appreciate the review. Let's get you back in here and get that fixed, or whatever, however you want to address that review. So that's for sure. That's informative, because I get asked about SEO all the time. And for me, it's for the majority of people out there, it's kind of this big mystery, like, okay, well, how does SEO actually work? So knowing that reviews are such a huge component of it, and that you have to get so many, and I'm not saying that anyone does this, but I'm sure at the beginning of time, or Google time, people are like, well, get our cousins and friends and family and everybody else reviewing online. Has Google figured that out?
In terms of the family members reviewing?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's get old, cousin review us. We haven't seen him in 30 years, but let's get him to review us too. Because you know what I mean? Like, I think that Google's figured out, they have an algorithm that figures out, some indicators as to whether the reviews are authentic or not.
They definitely can figure out the authenticity of the user profile. I mean, if you have a legitimate name and email address or whatever, and you've actually left some authentic reviews on some other sites, and even reviews that haven't been reported, they'll know that. So your family members are all, I think, pretty much safe. Will anybody know if it's somebody that actually hasn't done business at the practice? Probably not. But I mean, I think it's more important that, Google clamps down on any of those, bots that are going out there, and, people can actually pay for these bots to go and leave bad reviews on different dental practices, right? You see that. That's again why
you're actually seeing that.
Yeah, and the defense against that is responding to the review. Oh, and this is what we tell practices. The good thing to point out too, especially when you look at the name, is, oh, this is not this patient never came into our practice. We don't recognize this name anywhere in our patient base, right? Then you can of course report and take that up with Google. But really important to address those, even if it doesn't get removed. The fact that you have that response there. I don't know about you, but when I look at other businesses, I'm looking at those responses. So when the negative ones come up, can you see that there's a dialogue where the practice actually, you're like, you know what, the practice seems to be in the right here.
Yeah. Or that's really the practice has somebody on it that's flagging it and saying, you know what, just so our audience understands, this is not a real human that's making this comment, or however they want to respond to it. So that's important to know too. I'm just shocked that there's people that would, or I shouldn't say, I shouldn't really paint it with a negative brush, but like, that there's actual bots out there that are, geared to do this kind of thing. I mean, like that's
Oh,
all
for sure.
focus on giving our, giving patients and customers or whatever better service and upping the game, which I think is what Google's trying to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And another, back to the SEO part that we were discussing, 20%, we talked about reputation management, and CareCru will take care of that. Another 20% is going to come from your directory listings online. So that's going to be your practice's third-party information listed. Your practice's information listed on a third-party site. So Google Maps, right, where people leave you reviews, that's a directory listing. Yelp, RateMDs, like all of those are directories, and any other relevant dental directory is really important to be listed on, because Google's going to see, do we have a lot of these credible directory listings that are pointing back to your website? And that boosts your SEO. So you want to have all of those kind of back or third-party services backlinking your site. That is something that CareCru will take care of. We're actually going to take all of those directory listings. If you have missing ones that we can automatically post to, we will. Any of the ones that we need you to actually manually intervene with, we'll present you a list. It'll say, hey, this one has errors, this one is totally missing. And you can go and clean up that information, because Google actually takes a look at, is there consistent business information across all these directories? Okay. And that's, again, another 20%. So when you look at what CareCru takes care of, you can look at, we're almost covering off half of that SEO story just through what we do with reputation management and the directory listings.
Yeah, the directory listings, that's interesting. I didn't know that you guys could help manage the uniformity across all the directories. That's pretty key.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's amazing. And I didn't know that having like when you have third party, if you're a dentist and you're listed on a number of different third party sites, I didn't know that having, like, you should have somebody watching that, and obviously that's what you guys do. But it wouldn't have dawned on me to make sure that my information is accurate on a bunch of different third party directories. So it's good to know that, and it's good to know why.
Yeah, for sure. The ability to, and another important part is the relevance of those directories. So having said this, somebody can go, oh, I'm just going to go blast and, update my information on a bunch of other directories. What we do is also make sure that we've, based on your practice, refine the relevance of the directories that we need to list you on, right? It's not just, hey, go list on, all these other, non-dental directories just to get the full volume of it. There's a science to it. And so we understand that algorithm of what Google looks at, and that's how we prioritize which listings to put you on. And so this is stuff that marketing agencies that for years or go into a dental practice and work with them on, except that marketing agency, and I've seen a lot of these dentists, they spend like $5-10 grand a month on some of these marketing agencies, some of these dentists a lot more. Yeah. And it's a big spend that they justify that ROI in terms of leads. Okay, we brought you all these new website visitors, right? Well, with CareCru, we actually justify that ROI in a much more clear way by actually pointing to, hey, this is the production that made it back into your schedule based on recare, based on a new patient booking online. So we can actually show all of that, right? And that's exactly, that's actually where call tracking even comes in too.
Right. And do you have, like, is it, not to put you on the spot, do you have something like, is it like a pie chart or something you guys use for that? Or is it like how is that, like, is that a report you guys, because I see that you guys got practice growth reports, practice intelligence reports. So is that right, a report that they can pull up in the software at any given time?
Yeah. So that report, I think, the one you're referring to is probably going to be the call tracking report that shows more about how your patients are finding you online. Like, where is the volume of, like, the source of the volume of patients that are coming into your schedule? Is it coming from Google Ads? Is it coming from organic search? Is it coming from some third-party directory? Like, you can actually start to see online, like, where patients are finding you, and is that resulting in production in your schedule? If you're spending $5,000 a month on Google Ads, and then you look at your report here and you're like, oh, we've only generated 10 calls from Google Ads, and then those calls resulted in 0 bookings, that probably makes you want to, reassess my Google Ad spend.
Yeah, what's happening there? Exactly. Yeah, because even like with Dentist on Demand, we've got our clients listed on there. We've got dentists, but because we're one directory, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't dawn on me to make sure that hey, whatever other directories you're listed on, make sure that your information is consistent. So that's good information for us to have as well. Obviously, with a consultant that works with dentists every day, for me to have that information to say, hey, make sure you talk to Justin and his team. They can make sure that information is curated, or make sure that it's indexed properly. However you guys do it, I'm sure you guys have programmers that do all that coding for you, to make sure that information is accurate across every platform.
That's right. And making sure Dentist on Demand is definitely one of those directories that are coming top of the list of these practices to list on.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, we're still sort of small in Western Canada, but our numbers are slowly growing, and we're starting to see, working with companies like CareCru, the more valuable information that we can bring, via yourself and via our other partners, that are in this space. We just find that, like, the more information we have, the better in this Google Find Your Dentist world, right?
That's right.
Morning huddle report. Like, do you want to go into these, or is this? I
don't know what your list you're looking at. You're probably looking at our list of features. I mean,
I am.
The morning huddle report is something that's exciting, where Donna, that our virtual assistant's actually going to go in and find all the patients that are coming in today, go through all this data on them, like look at their ledger history, their appointment history, their family files, all the patients in those family files, and condense that into actionable insights for the practice staff. Right. So instead of
it really resonates for me, man, because having a morning huddle report, again, that's something where, if one of my clients comes to me and they're like, hey man, like, what do you recommend? Like, how can we get the team a little to work in unison a little more? And, the morning huddle always comes to me, and then it's time to create, right? It's time to get into a bit of a more of a creative, okay, well, what are we going to do in the morning huddle if the practice has never done them before? So like, when I see the morning huddle report, it looks to me like that there's some good information you can pull out of there to say, okay, well, let's start with this, what this report's giving us, and then formalize that into a morning huddle. And then start building some team harmony and some protocols from that report.
That's right. Every high functioning business has some form of morning stand up with certain teams, right? Let's all get together. Let's figure out what's on your plate. What are you focused on? Any blockers in front of you, any challenges, right? You got a quick, 10, 15 meeting kind of warm up in the morning. And so dental practices are, I would say, in that same classification of business. They're a multi-million-dollar business, per year. And so sometimes a lot of the staff, or a lot of the way that they're operated it's not respective of that. It's, that's such a simple thing that I would encourage all dental practices to be doing, and really be kind of considering what are those action items they're taking up in that morning huddle. And that's where we feed information into that. So if there's patients coming in the door missing contact information, or have family members that are doing unscheduled, and the fact that the patient is there in front of you, like, what are the best things to bring up because they're there in front of you? And that's really how the focus of our report is all centered around, knowing that you are going to have a face-to-face interaction. How can we equip you with some of those bullet points?
Right. This software does a lot, Justin. It's impressive, man. Like, I look at it quite a bit, and whenever I'm looking at it, I'm like, it does so much. So, like, again, for me, the jumping in point is, like, I think, like you said, it's that conversation about growth, right? It's where are you now? Where do you want to be? And I think that's the initial conversation for me when I talk to my clients about CareCru, is that, hey, like, growth is probably the number one on my list for a lot of my clients. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I do have a lot of established clients who are like, dude, I'm just trying to get through the day, man. I am so busy. My team is run off their feet. And I think even then, in that conversation, I'm like, okay, well, maybe there's an efficiency conversation that needs to happen here as well. Right?
Absolutely. And then growth comes in other areas, right? Maybe it's not new patient growth, but maybe that efficiency leads into a better top line, because they're, not having so many, mistakes, because they're running so hot and running so busy, where they have, let's say, some more missed or canceled appointments, right? And that's where, with some better practices and actually paying attention to some of your metrics, which, again, a whole nother piece of the platform, the business intelligence, the analytics, actually taking a look at some of that data to go, okay, where are there some opportunities for us? Are we running really efficient with keeping our schedule filled? Are we, probably getting too high of a missed canceled rate? That's where we can take a look to. There's always areas of opportunity. I mean, you hear this maybe from some doctors. There's nothing really they want to focus on because they're just so busy. Well, that's exactly the right time to focus on some of these things, right? To actually stop and dive into some of these areas and not spend too much time on it, but just to see where the areas of opportunity are. And so we wanted to make that really easy through our platform. We do a ton, and you're looking at our feature list and it's like, geez, what are these guys really focused on? Well, we recognize that in the market, there's a total lack of utilization. You see that with the practice management software, right? So we wanted to make sure we could really glue all this stuff together to really tell one story with each patient, right? So when you look at the patient's timeline in CareCru, it actually shows you that 360-degree view of, they they booked online and then they called into the practice. So you have the recording there. They left you a Google review. They booked their appointment. You get that full view that you might not get by just staring at your practice management software.
Right. Yeah. And you can see the level of engagement with the practice too. I mean, that seems really appealing to me. Because the more engagement you're seeing from them, the more you're knowing, okay, well, we've got a pretty engaged patient here. And then it's going to give you some intel on behaviors and when they're coming in, really kind of what they're expecting when they come to the practice. And for me, I've been a business owner in the past, and for me, it's like, if I can glean that information, if I know that information about the customer, and I don't like to use the word customer, obviously we're in dentistry, it's a patient, but if you have a 360 view of that person before they're coming in, even if it's just a refresher, even if they're a returning patient, and you know more about them today than you did 3 months ago, I think that's really valuable information.
It provides a better patient experience. It's just giving yourself more knowledge. That patient walks in the door, how can you provide them the best experience and be, a premium, business for that patient to walk in the door with? I think that's where you see where dentistry is headed. You walk into some of these dental practices, it's like you're walking into an Apple store. It's like, beautifully done. It's like they're really taking this kind of, experience prioritizing the experience at the top of the list. And you see that with just where these new builds are headed. They're just beautiful businesses to walk into. And so you need to, all the operations of the business need to reflect that.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. Totally agree with you. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about CareCru. I love that. I love you guys' software. I think what you guys have done is amazing. And keep going. What else can we talk about today?
We will definitely keep going. I mean, I appreciate that. And I'm glad we met. I think it was 2 years ago, and I'm glad we're finally doing this.
Yeah.
Definitely tons of exciting stuff happening in 2021 for us in terms of the product roadmap, in terms of some of the partnerships we've got coming down the pipeline. There's stay tuned for some of the exciting things that we're doing with treatment, with insurance, with collections. There's a lot of really exciting stuff coming down the pipeline.
Oh, collection. I want to see that
collections one. For sure. So again, all centered around making sure that we keep production in the schedule. We provide that overlay on the practice management software that you keep using it, because we know that changing that is very tough for some dentists, which is why we're not trying to be a practice management software. We want to power all the things that really fit on nicely on top of that. So,
yeah. And I think that's the mental block that I find. That I shouldn't say mental block, but I think it's getting over that hump mentally to say, you should look at CareCru, or you should look at, maybe reconfiguring your system or the brains behind your practice. It's looking at it going forward with I forget what I was going with this. I lost my thought. Well, just with a different mindset, because what I find is that, again, going back to the busy comment, is that if I'm super busy and someone's like, hey, you need to look, like, I use the analogy of being around my house with Katrina, with my wife. And she's like, Tyler, you really need to do this. You need to, whatever we got to do. We really got to, like, give me an example. What's something you got to do around the house that's really important, that's critical?
Take out the garbage.
Okay. Or
pay your mortgage.
Yeah, you really got to pay, or we really got to redo our mortgage, or whatever it is. Right. I mean, it's something that from my day to day, I'm like, I'm too busy to do that. I'm too busy to, okay, you got to get the car's got a problem with it. You got to fix it. Right. Is a good example. And, Katrina's always like, you got to fix it. You got to fix it. You got to fix it. And the day comes when I got to go to work and I can't get in my car. It doesn't work. I can't get my car to turn on. So for going back to that, you're too busy to make enhancements, to make improvements. It's, can you find that time to stop and go, okay, you know what? I got a few minutes. Let's look at the brains of my practice for real. What are we really doing here?
And it's to your analogy about the car, it starts with that engine light going off. right? You need
Right.
some indicator to know, without you being a freaking mechanic, that there's something going on with your car that you need to take a look at. We are those engine lights in so many different areas.
Right.
And we are the quick indicators of where you can look at some of these reports and just have a lot of these real-time pop-ups that tell you some of the things that you need to take care of. So it starts with just the knowledge of what's going on, and we need to really unearth that from some of these systems and some of these other third-party systems. Like, we kind of glue not just the practice management software, but a lot of things together. And so, some dentists are really savvy where they've got a lot of that stuff kind of already set up. And you look at those dentists, they're doing quite well. So it's about getting to the knowledge of how your business is operating. It's so key.
And that's why when you said collections, I'm like, ooh, I'm going to double click on that one. Cause cash is king, right? Like, a business can be doing $2-3 million and all of a sudden be like, well, why is money so tight? We're bringing in $3.5 million in revenue. What's going on? And, it's only at a certain time when your accountant calls you and says, hey, what's your AR looking like?
Yeah.
And that you go,
for sure.
Wait a minute, what's happening here? What's going? Okay, well, I mean, yeah, COVID. I get COVID's probably creating a lot of challenges for people. I totally get that, but just having that information of knowing if you can pull up a report or you can see in real time, like, holy smokes, we've got $200,000 in AR, we better get on that. That's, I've seen it before, and again, speaking as an ex-business owner, like, I remember running a little company when I was in school. And I remember always being like, well, wait a minute. I'm painting more houses. I was a house painter, College Pro, shout out. But they got me through school though. So, I mean, College Pro, back in the day, I'm not even sure they're still around, but I did College Pro for 2 or 3 years, and man, oh man, it got me through university. So I can never say enough good things about College Pro. Taught me how to work, taught me how to run a business. But at the time, I remember it was a hard, fast lesson in business back when I was 19, 20 years old to say, hey man, if you're not collecting those checks, if you're not signing off on those jobs and doing the quality check report and making sure you collect that cash, you won't cover payroll on Friday. You're going to run into a major issue. So AR for me, and it can get away on you fast. So if you can pull that type of information up quickly in your software, I would love to see something like that.
And not just pull it, action on it. Like, actually providing that, we sometimes refer to Donna as like that air cover, right? Where your staff are, kind of at the ground level dealing with the patients coming in the door. But, we provide that first, attempt, and a lot of it converts, where we would be able to reach out to those patients that owe you money and get that payment in the door. But then again, be able to work alongside Donna, which is really the same philosophy we've applied to ReCare or any of our patient management modules. It's that there's this automation in the background and you're prompted at the right time on when we need you to intervene.
Yeah, absolutely. And you provided a service, you got to get paid for it. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep the practice running. So that's a critical component, getting cash in the business. This has been great, Justin. Is there anything else we want to cover today?
I think we're good. I mean, I'm glad we finally did this. Like I said, this was awesome.
Cool. Yeah, and I'm still doing a few practice analysis out there, and I always think, when I do run through the numbers with a client, I take a look at what they're doing for ReCare, what their hygiene numbers are looking like, and I'm like, CareCru always pops in my head, and I'm like, you should really talk to my CareCru friends. They've got the system in place that's going to help you automate and manage this process. So we're starting to see a lot of traction out here in Western Canada. I'm sure you're seeing a lot of traction.
Sure. Yeah.
All over North America. So that's congrats.
Yeah.
Justin Sharp, thank you so much for being on our show, on my show with me today. We had a solo podcast. Usually I have Mark with me, but today I just wanted to do a one-on-one deep dive with you. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here.
That was awesome. Thanks, Tyler.
Okay, we'll catch up soon. And again, Tyler McLennan, Dentist on Demand. Thank you for watching the show. I say show, it's more of a podcast. Podcast, right? Not a show. Not a
podcast. We're just chatting.
We're just chatting. There's no showmanship here. We're just talking.
That's right.
Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next podcast.